Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about why I don't post on forums anymore. This isn't an answer to a direct question, but more of a response to I've seen people ask why game devs in general don't interact more with game players. And I've specifically seen things going, I wonder why Tim doesn't post here much anymore, especially in places I used to post a lot. So I want to talk about that because I used to be really active in online forums, and I posted to a lot of different ones. And I'm not even talking recently. I used to, before it was the web, when it was just the internet, I used to post on Usenet sites all the time, like CompSys Games or Rec Games FRP. I'd post about GURPS. I'd post about my D&D games. I used to post about Fallout in the 90s when we were doing that. All this slowed down about 15 years ago and pretty much stopped. And this is my explanation of why. By the way, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation. I know there are some people out there that can't tell the difference, or maybe pretend like they can't tell the difference so they can be angry, which I'll get to. But this is an explanation on why I don't post to forums. And the reason it's an explanation and not an excuse is I don't have to post in forums. There's nothing in my job title that says you got to post there. And I didn't go into making games so I could argue with people on forums. So I don't post there because I don't want to. And this is my explanation of why. Also, I want to make clear I'm not speaking for every gamer here, just speaking for myself, but I wouldn't be surprised if my reasons were very similar to why a lot of other game developers don't post on forums. So here's why. The first one for me is I find it much easier to say than write. I've had two videos, and I'll link them below, about my memoirs. And they were a perfect example of this principle that somehow applies to me in action, because people who knew me, people I worked with, people I was friends with, even a family member who read my book, misunderstood it, and mostly it came down to tone. They said, well, this sounds like you're angry, or it sounds like you're assigning blame. But then I'd tell them the same story, and they're like, oh, that's fun. Oh, I get it. And I couldn't figure out how to do it. Two different people out of the 6 who've read it have suggested I get a ghostwriter. I don't want to do that. You don't get a ghostwriter on your autobiography, on your memoirs, or at least I don't. That, to me, that's, if I can't write it myself, it's not going to get written. So I did this. I find it hard to change how I write too, which is just whatever. I mentioned this before, but a big reason I stopped posting to forums was also because they're so anger driven now. They're anger forward. It was always the case that there were some people on the forums who were venting. I get it. I mean, way back in Usenet, you can find people who were upset because they couldn't get Fallout to install. And they're like, there's something wrong with the CD. And I tried to explain to them that the CD was full from edge to inside, and that there were a lot of cheap CD-ROM readers out there that couldn't read full discs. And they go, well, this game installed and this game installed. I'm like, that's because they weren't full. And one guy didn't believe me, and I said, do you have a friend who doesn't have these, I think it was 3 brands? If so, go to their house and see if it'll install there. And he did, and it did. So anyway, but that was like a back and forth. As angry as he was, we still went back and forth and solved the problem for him. But today it just seems like a lot of people just want to hate things. That's what they like. They seem to like hating things, which confuses me, because I've said this time and again. There are so many good games out there that they could be playing, and in some cases they are playing. But rather than talk about those games and why they love them and how much fun they're having with them, and giving really good feedback to developers going, more games like this, please. Instead, they talk about the stuff they're angry about, and they just yell about it. I hate this game. It's so stupid. Why did they do this? And of course, there are people out there who farm this. When people figured out that they can make money from all of these other people being angry, clicks, ads, whatever, they started farming it, which meant they found it was in their best interest, because it led to money, to incite all of this, to post videos going, this company screwed everyone again, this publisher screwed everyone again, this game is the worst thing ever, it's an insult to game players everywhere. So that kind of environment, I don't think is conducive to getting better games. I mean, you may feel slightly better in the moment for venting, but you're not going to get any better games out of that. The other reason I stopped posting was forums used to be a great place to go to interact with people with opposing viewpoints. And what I mean is, it used to be fun to discuss games with people who liked different things and wanted to talk about that, as opposed to now where they just want to yell and scream about it. So they wouldn't get angry that people wanted different things. They talked about those different things. Now, I talked about this in my developer video on what gamers want, and then the sequel, do developers know what gamers want? A lot of people chose to ignore the central thesis in those videos, which I will repeat here. Gamers want a whole bunch of different things and demand that some features get removed, while others complain if they are removed. Others complain if there are options to pick features. They don't even like if you're like, hey, you can turn fast travel on and off, because they either complain the game was designed with fast travel and turning it off makes it bad, or if you have lots of different options, they're like, don't make me design your game for you. I have a whole bunch of videos on this. The bottom line is, no matter what you make these days, some people will feel ignored, which makes them angry, which leads to that first problem of then they're just posting about how angry they are and how we're not listening to them, which is, I can hear you, but do you realize there's a bunch of people who disagree with you? And I can't even tell who the majority is anymore. Which leads to, I think, what the biggest problem is, and I've mentioned this before, and I've talked to people about this on some forums before I left, but the signal to noise ratio grew too low. And what I mean is, I used to have these great conversations with people in forums about mechanics and settings and the pros and cons of different ones, and we would go back and forth, and I think when we left, we may not have adopted each other's game philosophy, but at least we understood why certain games were being made the way they were and why some people liked it. Now, that's all gone. It's all boiled down to, this is stupid. This person's lazy. This is all woke. And it doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't lead to a better game. It just leads to a lot of people venting. And I have so many videos on giving good feedback and how feedback should be relevant and specific and actionable. Otherwise, there's not much that can be done with it. And people used to do that. People who push back and go, no, it's not my job. I don't want to do that. Well, people used to do that. I used to have great talks on forums about games I made and their specific development. And I got really relevant, specific, actionable feedback. And that was awesome. Hardly anyone does that anymore. And it's hard to find the people who are, because I had people go, Tim, I'm doing it. I can't find you. You're doing it, and hundreds of thousands and millions of other people aren't. And it's just too hard to find you. What's weird about it is just saying hardly anyone does that anymore. I find myself in a catch-22 where I can't and shouldn't complain about it because I'm adding to the noise. I'm just by complaining about it, I'm adding to the noise, and then people think I'm blaming them, which makes them angry, which leads back to the first problem. And all of that noise, I mean, the noise itself has just become, it's not, I don't want to say it's not actionable, but just the whole devs are stupid and lazy and dumb and all that. It just, after a while, you're like, and why should I come to a forum just to read all this? That's a good question. Why am I here? Because I used to come here for great discussion, and now I just come for personal attacks. And if I complain about that, suddenly I'm a big baby. So I just stopped going to forums. I didn't yell at people. I didn't tell them they're all contributing to the problem. I just stopped going. And I think that was really unfortunate, because that act of mine ended a great communication path between me and gamers. And as more and more game developers stopped going to forums, there was far less communication between developers and gamers. And I think about this a lot when I see gamers complaining about developers not listening to them, because I agree they should listen to them, but you need to agree that it should be a conversation. And I think the art of conversation has been utterly lost. I'm not logging into a forum just to get yelled at by 10,000 people. Because that 10,001th person goes, hey, I had an idea for a better mechanic. I'm sure you do. And you know what? That may be the best idea ever. But somewhere around the first few thousandth wading through negative comments, I tapped out. And that's sad because those conversations are now lost. What do I do instead? I do this channel. And this lets me still express what my game philosophies are and tell stories about game development. And for the most part, the comments are really good. So in that sense, I'm hoping that there's this little teeny corner of the internet that I've, carved out that still pretty much has a high signal to noise ratio. And I guarantee you, the day I decide to stop doing this channel, one of the reasons, besides me being tired and old and having run out of stories, will be, the signal to noise ratio has dropped. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to explain why I'm not active on forums like I used to be in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. Anyway, that's it.